Welcome back, everybody. It's Sunday, Father's Day, and I get to spend my Father's Day being a father type and working on my son's car. This is my youngest son's newer vehicle, bought from Grandma. It's a 2007 Sonata V6. Pretty nice little car, especially for an 18-year-old. But what we have to do today is a suspension rebuild on the front. It's got a lot of clanking and just noise, and it's more than likely ball joints that are expired. Pretty common failure points on these cars, and this one has like 113-ish thousand miles on it, so it's due for some new parts. It's pretty straightforward suspension stuff, just a lot of bolts and high torque, lots of rust, probably trying to break them loose, but whatever. See if we can work our way through it. I'm going to go ahead and get the car up on the jack stand and start taking the wheel, brake, and all that apart so we can get to the parts we need to replace. Okay, so step one, I'm going to wait a bit. I've hit all of the bolts and nuts that are in play with some penetrating oil. You have to pull unfortunately, you have to pull the strut out of this car to get the upper control arm out. Those bolts there won't slide back and clear the strut, so you can't just take them out and then put the new rod or new arm back in. That's really the biggest challenge with this one, is just having to pull the strut. Everything else is pretty straightforward. You wouldn't even have to pop the axle shaft out to change it if it wasn't for that. You could do it all and leave the axle assembly in the knuckle, but it is what it is. So got my drill battery, my impact battery charging up, and give it an hour or so and let this penetrant work through, and then come back and start tackling this job. Okay, started the disassembly. I'm just gonna go over all the locations and nuts, bolts you got to remove. The top, you've got a control arm ball joint, and that is a 17 or 19, can't remember. Got to take that off. There's a series of 12s that hold the ABS and brake line to the strut and the knuckle. There's two here, and then behind here, let's see where that hose is going. There is another one that it's a little hidden, but you just got to use a socket. The others were able to be taken off with a ratchet wrench. You got to get a socket in for this one back here. Then obviously you got the tie rod bolt right there, and then underneath, see if I can shoot that, you've got the lower ball joint bolt nut to take off, and then you've got the strut support bolt right here. That is a 19 on either end, or a 3/4 on one end, 19 on the other if you only got one of each, and that'll work. You gotta get that guy off. Obviously it's Japanese, not American or Asia, or you got the stupid Phillips screws holding the rotor to the knuckle. May or may not go back in. Most of my experience with these, they somehow conveniently get left out. You do have to take the brake caliper off, and I have it over here supported. You don't want to leave that hanging loose. What I'm held up on now is this bolt nut. I don't have a socket for it. It is roughly 1.1/16 inches from what I can gather, and I don't know the metric equivalent, but I'm gonna have to run up to the parts store and get the appropriate socket for that. That's fine. I'm just trying to be chill with this and take my time. So far every bolt has come off very easily, except for this one. It got galled up right here. Threads were damaged probably when they put it on, so I had to really kind of lay on that with the impact, but it eventually spun off. And even the cotter pins weren't too bad to get out. Well, the lower one was very rusted. I had to cut it out and then pick it out from the castle nut. But yeah, so that's the disassembly process up to this point, and then I'll get that going and film the disassembly of the actual ball joints and installation of the new parts. Quick addendum to the bolts. I forgot about the Stablink bolt there. That looks like a 19, and I did measure with my calipers the bolt for the axle nut, and it came up to 1 1/4, not 1 1/16, or a 32 mil. So that's what I'm heading off to the parts store to grab. Okay, here it is all disassembled. I got the strut out, got that Stablink pulled out. That thing's bad, and I don't have a replacement. And I mean, it's bad in the sense that it's loose, it'll still bolt back up, but Probably should replace it, but I'd have to wait around and I don't have time, so that's going to just have to go back together. So all that's left here is to get up here and take these bolts out of the upper control arm and then mount my new ball joint to the knuckle. I did end up pulling this bracket right here that holds the ABS wire because it was just really tight against the knuckle. With that still in place, it gave me a little more throw. So I would do that too before you remove the knuckle. That's something I just learned. Getting the strut out's a pain in the ass as usual, but you know, it managed to wiggle, jiggle, pry, and it came loose. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this upper control arm replaced and then start reassembling everything. Okay, here it is all back together. It was a bit of a fight, of course, having never done this particular car setup before. In all honesty, the biggest challenge I had was getting the orientation of the hoses and lines back to where they're supposed to be. Had to pull the other side off and reference it, and when I put the strut back in, I got the brake line trapped on the wrong side of it, so I had to take the brake line off and relume it. So now I have to bleed the brakes, and I'm just waiting for my son to get back with some brake fluid and some new cotter pins to get this all put back together, but definitely on the home stretch. So as far as advice for doing this, number one is make sure that you have pictures of your hose orientation and know which side of the structural components the lines go across. That'll save you some hassle. I mean, it is what it is. It wasn't the biggest deal to take it apart, but it's just one more step I added to the process. Of course, you want to be careful when you take your knuckle off not to stretch your CV joints out of the way and pop them. It's basic. That's just basic, you know, care stuff when you're dealing with suspension. Other than that, she's all back together. As soon as I get them bled, get the wheel back on, we'll go take it for a test drive. All right, just got back from the test drive and everything is fantastic. It handles so much better on the left-hand side now. I still have to do the right side. There's still, well, here comes the train. A lot of clunking on the right side, same condition that the left had, but I have the parts for it. I bought a kit. Hey, there's my dog. There goes my dog. Sits up higher on the left and the right. I don't know if you can tell from the video, but just that, you know, non-collapsed ball joints and all that. The right height's back to where it should be. Do have to replace the tie rods that came with the kit, but I couldn't find my monkey wrench, so I wasn't able to take those apart. But this has been successfully completed on the left-hand side. Next weekend I'll do the other. I am going to link a video that I watched. It's a much better step-by-step tutorial on how to do this. It's the one I referenced to take on this project in the description, so you can watch that if you have to do the same on the same car, same chassis type, or just in general. It's kind of the same steps for any front wheel drive McPherson strut suspension replacement, and I'll have that link down in the description. So I'm going to close this one out. Again, like and subscribe, and hit notification bell so you get notices when new videos come out. There's going to be a few. I'm starting to pick up the pace again. The next step, I think, is to actually do the same job I just did on the Blazer, because its suspension is trashed, but that's going to be a full underneath suspension bars. What do they really call those? Pitman arms, idler arm, the cross-link sway bar, everything's going to have to be redone on this. It is just absolutely terrible. And I'm thinking I'm going to keep it now that I have the project truck to work on. I need something to run around in. And then when the project truck's completed, I don't want to drive it around in the winter, and this is a viable four-wheel, so I'm going to keep this one and put some money into it. That may be the next video I do. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you when the next one comes out.